all-time draft trade. Eli Manning for Phillip Rivers.
That was the ultimate game of cat and mouse. Ernie Accorsi, the general manager of the Giants, knew he wanted Eli Manning. But A.J. Smith, who was running the draft for the Chargers, also knew that if he held out for a long time, that he was going to get the best deal he could.
With the first choice in the 2004 NFL Draft, the San Diego Chargers select Eli Manning, quarterback, Mississippi.
The Chargers had one problem. Eli wasn't interested in playing for San Diego. So Giants GM Ernie Accorsi got his quarterback.
The San Diego Chargers and the New York Giants have exchanged their draft picks, Eli Manning and Phillip Rivers.
Eli Manning's become the most hated sports figure in San Diego since Ryan Leaf because of his stance before the draft and just saying that he wasn't going to play for the Chargers.
That's a situation like the John Elway drafting in Baltimore where the player forced the issue.
Accorsi pounced because as a young general manager, he had been jilted after drafting a highly touted quarterback in 1983.
Baltimore selects as the first choice in the draft, quarterback John Elway of Stanford.
Elway held out until the Colts traded him to the Broncos, where he became a legend.
John, was not willing to sign with the Colts, and so we had a chance, to get best quarterback to come out in the draft in a long, long time.
Touchdown, 98.5-yard drive.
2 decades after losing Elway, Accorsi was determined to get Manning at all costs.
Okay, thanks. Bye-bye.
All you have to do around Ernie is mention the John Elway deal, and he talks about how that could have changed the fortunes of that franchise. I wouldn't doubt at all if that wasn't in his mind when he made that trade.
And then A.J. Smith was the one who made that trade work because he used those picks for Nate Kading, who has become a Pro Bowl kicker.
He's going to fire it right up and through.
And Sean Merriman, who's become one of the best defensive players in the league. And then he even traded the 5th-round pick that they got for Roman Oben, who was a staple at left tackle for a year and a half and kind of helped stabilize their line.
Now that Eli Manning has 2 Super Bowl rings, the question is, who got the best of our 10th all-time draft day trade?
What a play by the quarterback.
Easy to say now while Eli's won 2, so the Chargers got robbed in this deal. But Rivers has been a great fit for what San Diego's doing. San Diego's been in contention every year.
Towards the end zone, caught, touchdown, San Diego!
It's worked out really well for both sides still. Both guys are giving you a good return on your investment.
It's probably a trade that both teams are probably happy with because they've both got a quarterback that they know they can win with.
The number 9 all-time draft trade. The Steelers get Jerome Bettis.
Jerome Bettis is a perfect back for the way the Steelers want to play football. It just gave him a whole second career, which he took tremendous advantage of.
And he gets to the goal line for the touchdown. Smash my football, baby. Pittsburgh style.
On draft day in 1996, the Pittsburgh Steelers sent their 2nd-round pick and a future selection to the Rams for Bettis.
There were some people that thought that the Steelers paid too high a price because they thought they were getting a guy that was near the end of his career, if not at the end of his career.
I think they really knew that he was in a system that didn't fit him. You could see the numbers kind of going down, not because he wasn't healthy. It was because the Rams at the time wanted to throw the ball more than run it.
I think the biggest lesson that I learned was that I couldn't quit. Things are not going to always be great, and that you have to just pick your head up and give it another try.
The Rams used the 2nd-round pick to get tight end Ernie Conwell.
Conwell touchdown!
And ended up trading the 4th-round pick, which resulted in wide receiver Dedrick Ward.
Touchdown, Dedrick Ward!
They said I was done, over with, finished. Yeah. Wait till they get a load of me.
Bettis became a very perfect fit for what the Steelers wanted to do offensively, which was a big back, pound the football, control the ball on the ground kind of team.
They asked for me. They wanted me. Well, they got me. He's on his feet at the 5. End zone, touchdown, Pittsburgh. Here comes the bus. People,
The bus shakes him off like flies.
He just fit this town, this franchise, this philosophy, the Cowher philosophy, like a glove.
You know what? We're going to keep your ass here for a while, too. Hey, I got to. You got to keep me. I want to retire here, Coach.
Jerome would smile at everybody, and people love him. And yet he goes out there and takes great linebackers into the end zone on his back.
And he's still on his feet, and he gets to the goal line for a touchdown.
The Bus finished his career as the NFL's 5th all-time rusher, and in 2005, even as a backup, still had his eyes on the game's greatest prize.
I want to get my team to the Super Bowl. You know, I want to play in the Super Bowl. I want to win a ring. I want to be a champion.
He came on in the second half in a game against Chicago at home and gained 100 yards in the second half alone in the snow, running over Brian Urlacher for a touchdown.
The Bus drives, and the Bus gets to the goal line. Touchdown, Pittsburgh!
And I think from that game on, he had them believing that they could actually get to Detroit. It was such a wonderful story.
The Bus helped the Steelers win 3 straight road games during the playoffs, and Pittsburgh earned 1 for the thumb.
The game is over. The Pittsburgh Steelers did it the hard way. They come to Detroit with a job well done. We're champions of the world, baby. They can't take this from us. We're champions forever.
Our number 8 all-time draft trade. The Dolphins deal for Paul Warfield.
Joe Thomas is sort of the forgotten man of the Miami Dolphins. There's no sort of about it. Don Shula eventually was the man who made all the pieces march. But Joe Thomas gave the pieces to Don Shula. Without Thomas, they could never have been what they were.
Before Don Shula's arrival, Miami Director of Player Personnel Joe Thomas acquired 21 of the 22 starters on the 72 Dolphins through shrewd drafting and clever trades.
He played a big role in all of their draft choices. Bob Greasy, Larry Zonka, Mercury Morris, and some of those great players that helped me win Super Bowls.
Thomas's biggest move was our number 8 trade, Miami's first-round pick in 1970 for the NFL's best receiver, Paul Warfield.
Warfield, touchdown!
At the time, the Dolphins had never won more than 5 games in a season.
Greasy drops the ball on the snap, and it's recovered by Dallas. The Cowboys have recovered the ball.
They were 3-10-1 the year before I got here, and I think that's one of the reasons they made the change, because they didn't feel that the coach was getting the job done with the talent that Joe Thomas had provided them.
It really was Joe Thomas's brainstorm. He was very proud of the fact that he engineered that deal.
Cleveland used the number 3 overall pick on highly touted quarterback Mike Phipps.
Phipps was thought to be a franchise quarterback coming out. I mean, he had a great career at Purdue, tremendously accurate passer, had won, seemed to have the composure, the smarts, everything you look to be the kind of guy you build a team around. That was why they made the trade.
In Cleveland, Phipps constantly battled injuries, never threw for more than 2,000 yards in a season, and threw almost twice as many interceptions as touchdowns.
Asking me about Mike Phipps is like asking me about just a run-of-the-mill quarterback. That's what he was.
Warfield proved to be the final piece in the Dolphins' championship puzzle.
Firing down the corner, Warfield, touchdown!
Warfield was just an amazing athlete. He had tremendous speed. He had great moves. Nobody could defend him. I mean, nobody could defend him.
In 1971, the Dolphins reached the Super Bowl.
Warfield's got a touchdown!
And with their perfect wide receiver, the 1972 Dolphins became the perfect team.
The Dolphins have completed the greatest season in NFL history.
And Mike's career was marred by injuries and inconsistency, and Paul Warfield was a Hall of Fame receiver. So, what more could you ask for?
Firing deep downfield, Warfield, great catch, and he's in for the touchdown.
The number 7 all-time draft trade, the Jeff George blockbuster.
When people saw his arm for the first time in a workout setting, there was awe.
I mean, that ball was, phew, it was like throwing it through a car wash and not getting it wet.
Threw 50 balls. Not one of those balls hit the ground. Everything was perfect, right on line.
The hype machine was there. And I think that the Falcons did a good job of kind of fueling that hype machine as well.
In 1990, Ron Meyer's Indianapolis Colts thought they were just one player away from being a Super Bowl contender. They already had the NFL's best running back.
Launches himself to the goal line. Touchdown, Eric Dickerson. Come on, Bunch. Come on, Bunch. Let's go. Shake it up. Shake it up.
After the combine, the Colts were determined to get Jeff George, but Atlanta had the #1 pick in the draft, and they were ready to make Indianapolis pay a hefty price.
I said, okay, stop this workout, that's it. I said, we're not going any further. This is the guy we're picking. I've seen enough. Taylor Smith was the owner who was with me. So we walk off the field, he says, what are you doing? I said, we got to get them to know that we really want this guy, and we want to make sure that they're going to pay the right price.
With its choice obtained by trade from Atlanta, Indianapolis selects Jeff George, quarterback from Illinois.
We did make the trade because I just felt the quarterback is the key in the NFL.
Sets up, looks, throws to the end zone. Touchdown!
If you don't have one, you're 88 and out the gate.
The Colts got George's big arm and big hair, but at a big price. 4 players, including star lineman Chris Hinton, wide receiver Andre Rison, and the Colts' first-round pick the next season.
Now, obviously, we lost a couple good players in Rison and in Chris Hinton, but I felt we could replace those. You cannot replace a quarterback.
Take a step forward to get Jeff George. They took quantum leaps back because they gave up some of the talent around him.
We got the deal of the century. Even if Jeff George had panned out to be close to Peyton Manning, I really think that we got a great deal.
One of these days it's going to be really sweet, and Jeff George is going to lead the team to the Super Bowl, and being from his hometown, it's going to be really nice.
Born in Indianapolis, George was buried there by opposing defenses.
Are you on top of everything?
George rapidly deteriorated, throwing more interceptions than touchdowns and posting only 1 winning season in 4 years.
His problem early in his career is that he was a selfish guy. And that was a tag that he could never shake the rest of his career.
You know everything? Yeah. Throws, it's intercepted by James Jones at the 10. Touchdown, Browns!
In Atlanta, head coach Jerry Glanville used the Colts' best players to take the Falcons into the playoffs for the first time in more than a decade.
There's a man open. Touchdown! Showtime! Showtime!
We thought we needed a lot of players. We didn't need a player. We thought we got one of the top guards in all of football. And really, Andre Rison's strength was what he did inside the 12-yard line. Andre Rison wanted a touchdown. That's all he lived for.
Right down the middle. Touchdown, Andre Rison. Mark it down. The Falcons will go to the playoffs.
This was huge. This was one of the best things, if not the best thing, that the Falcons have ever done in their life.
Even though the Falcons outdid the Colts on this horse trade, they undid almost everything by trading for George in 1994.
These guys are going at it. Yep. Boy.
You knew sooner or later that Jeff George was going to become Jeff George. And to see that scene on the sidelines where you got Jeff George screaming at June Jones, it was just beyond anything that you could possibly imagine.
Over the next 10 years, George suited up for 5 different teams and never met the high expectations.
The intangibles that go into a quarterback. Peyton Manning has it. Tom Brady has it. Jeff George lacked something. I don't know what it was. It certainly wasn't talent.
I just don't see that type of competitiveness, that type of damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead, whatever it takes to win. I didn't always see that with Jeff, and I think that was the difference on what elevates one from this level up to the other.
The number 6 all-time draft trade. Michael Vick for LaDainian Tomlinson.
That was the draft that set the Chargers on the course they are on now, which has made them the most talented team in all of football.
The Michael Vick LaDainian Tomlinson trade, to me, will be, without any question, the most interesting trade of the decade that we currently live in.
Charger fans are witnesses to history!
Michael Vick entered the 2001 draft as the most exciting player in college football.
Lightning in the bottle, that's what he is.
But the Chargers needed a quarterback and a running back, and general manager John Butler was determined to get both.
I'm gonna give them all this, baby. I'm gonna give them all that.
So what happened is the Chargers decided that there's a quarterback who they really liked out of Purdue. They thought they could get down the line, Drew Brees.
When San Diego started shopping around the number 1 pick, buyers were hard to find.
Teams basically are sort of set in their ways with what they want to do. except the Atlanta Falcons.
When it came to us, if you really looked at it, we were the most legitimate possibility to get a good trade for them. We were looking because Chris Chandler was getting at the end of his career.
Chris Chandler is hurt.
Felt it would be ideal to bring in a quarterback like Mike Vick.
But the Chargers think that there's one player who they really want. They tell Dan Reeves of the Falcons, look, we really want Tim Dwight.
Dwight with one to beat. Touchdown. 94 yards.
One of the tough ones in it for us was Tim Dwight, who had been a really good player. But when we looked at it, Tim Dwight was going to be a free agent. So therefore, we felt like that this was an opportunity that we could use Tim Dwight and help us, make the trade with Mike Vick.
Tim Dwight, when they made that trade, was the player that they insisted that they had to have.
So actually, there was about a 36-hour Tim Dwight roadblock to the biggest trade in the last 10 years.
In addition to Tim Dwight and Atlanta's top pick, the Falcons gave the Chargers cornerback Tay Cody and a second-round pick in 2002.
The San Diego Chargers select LaDainian Tomlinson.
At the time, scouts warned that Tomlinson had, quote, bust written all over him.
Whoever said it should hope that it got lost in the internet or somewhere because it didn't pan out.
LT quickly established himself as football's premier running back.
LaDainian touchdown!
LaDainian Tomlinson, the special one, the gifted one. A cut that only few have ever been able to make.
The Chargers used their first pick in the second round to get Drew Brees, who combined with Tomlinson helped spark San Diego's recent success.
Pump fake and throw. Touchdown!
At first, Atlanta benefited the most.
I don't know of anybody that ever played the game that at the quarterback position was the fastest player on the field. And Mike Vick has been in that situation a lot.
Did you see that smoke coming off of Mike Vick's shoes?
Vick, with his exciting brand of football, engineered a fast turnaround in Atlanta.
Yes! By Quentin McCord. That's what you call it. Hell, that's what we got him for. Atlanta's last gasp. Down 4. Touchdown to win. Michael looking to the left. Throws. Todd Cropper. Touchdown Atlanta. I don't think they realize the S that's on this guy's chest underneath his uniform.
Our number 6 deal turned the football world upside down. But who won?
Week in and week out, he's worth the ticket price.
Just so special, number 21.
I think the best part of the trade is I think both teams walk away with very good players.
Initially, I thought the Atlanta Falcons got the best in that because you saw how good he was early in his career, able to carry the Falcons to a fact where they can go to Green Bay, win a playoff game.
The Falcons have won the wild card game. It really is astonishing.
And then go to a championship game. That's how good I thought he was.
Here comes the blitz. Vick, deep drop, in trouble. He'll keep the football, looking, pumps once. Watch him go. 35-30, 25-20, 15-10, 5. Touchdown, Mike Vick!
I give the check mark to San Diego. They got a future MVP in this league in that deal. And they got a guy who I believe will be right there with Jim Brown as the greatest 2 running backs in NFL history when he's all done.
The number 5 all-time draft trade, the Cowboys steal Tony Dorsett. Number 5.
We really didn't think there was any way we were going to get Tony Dorsett. Then all of a sudden, we've made a deal with Seattle, and we got a chance now to get Tony Dorsett.
In 1977, the University of Pittsburgh's Tony Dorsett entered the NFL draft after leading the Panthers to a national championship and winning the Heisman Trophy as college football's all-time leading rusher.
He had a gear that very few people possess. Somebody said to Tony once, "How fast are you?" He said, "It depends on who's chasing you." Nobody ever caught him.
The Seattle Seahawks trade their first-round selection to the Dallas Cowboys.
Boom, we get Tony Dorsett.
Tony Dorsett, touchdown!
About 2 weeks before the draft even came about, I was talking with one of the vice presidents for the Dallas Cowboys, Gil Brandt, and I was telling him how I really didn't want to go to an expansion team. He said, "Oh, don't worry about it, Tito. You'll probably end up a great team." I'm like, "Oh, yeah, sure, Gil." And come draft day, I get that call from nobody but Gil Brandt. And he's telling me that I've been drafted by the Dallas Cowboys. You talking about somebody like a little kid in a toy store. Man, I was tickled pink.
Believe me, I became a much better running back coach awful quick.
To the 5, touchdown!
when we got Tony Dorsett, he was that type of back. He could take something that was, planned to go one place and just go completely opposite direction, take it in for, 6 points.
In Dallas, the original TD led the Cowboys to the Vince Lombardi Trophy as a rookie.
Hands it off to Dorsett, drives, touchdown!
That was one of the great deals the Dallas Cowboys ever made.
It was the worst trade the Seahawks have ever made, exchanging a future Hall of Famer for 4 draft picks.
So they had the opportunity to trade away a high draft choice and pick up 3 or 4 or 5 what they thought would be quality players.
Well, the deal happened because certainly the Seahawks wanted to try to get volume, and Tony Dorsett didn't want to go to Seattle.
Why do we want to go with a guy who has publicly said he doesn't want to be here? Let's get 4 players, or however many we can trade for, that we know will be happy to be here and can contribute.
Had the Seahawks stayed there and taken Tony Dorsett, they have Tony Dorsett to go along with Jim Zorn and Steve Largent. Wow, no telling what Seattle might have turned into.
Touchdown Seahawks on the run by Zorn.
With Dallas's pick, Seattle got guard Steve August, tackle Tom Lynch, and linebacker Terry Beeson. The Seahawks traded the final Cowboy pick, and in the end, wound up with 3 more role players. All were out of the NFL by the mid-'80s.
So they got enough guys to fill out their starting lineup, but not enough guys to put them over the top.
I think there's a lot of people that would second-guess that decision. And frankly, I'm one of them.
One more thing. That last pick Seattle traded away went to San Francisco. Bill Walsh used it to draft Joe Montana.
The number 4 all-time draft trade. The Ricky Williams blockbuster.
Well, at the league meeting that year, Mike Ditka announced that he would trade his whole draft for Ricky Williams. So we called him the next day and said, hey, put us in line.
Going into the 1999 draft, Texas running back Ricky Williams was billed as the second coming of Earl Campbell.
I like, his size. I like this. He's almost like an Earl Campbell type, but I think he's faster.
Impressed by the young Longhorn, Saints coach Mike Ditka was willing to hawk his entire draft to rope in Williams.
The Saints were willing to make a deal. So we said, well, your whole draft's not enough. We had to have more, so we asked for a 1st and a 3rd the following year.
There has been a trade involving this 5th pick in the draft. The New Orleans Saints are now on the clock.
In exchange for moving up from 12 to 5, Ditka gave Washington every one of his picks.
New Orleans 1st, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, and 7th round picks in this draft, and New Orleans 1st and 3rd round picks in next year's draft.
Classic example of where the coach seizes the day and is thinking only about that season and next season.
At first, it was a public relations bonanza for the floundering Saints. Chomping on a cigar, Ditka left team headquarters after the trade, pronouncing his day over, which it was.
There is no player in the National Football League that is worth an entire draft. I understand giving up a few picks, a 1st and a 2nd. Maybe.
You could argue maybe.
Maybe.
It was still probably a stretch, but maybe.
No, I can't even do a 3rd. A 1st and a 2nd for Ricky Williams. But you don't give up the entire draft. It kills you.
When you're in a mess, you're stuck in a mess. You can't. One player is not getting you out. It's a team game. There's about 53 players on your team, and you better have a plan for the whole team.
Injuries from the game.
Talk to the trainer. Next.
All right now.
Mike, why are you in such a bad mood?
What do you care?
Good.
Okay. If you were 2-7, you'd be in a bad mood too.
New Orleans went 3-13, and Iron Mike was fired.
The look on Mike Ditka's face about says it all.
People tend to regard Mike as a knee-jerk kind of thinker and a guy who's impulsive and makes rash decisions.
I think we became a team today. We became a team.
And this would appear to be a knee-jerk rash decision to give away a whole draft for one guy.
Conventional wisdom has it that Ditka was taken, but the truth is a little more murky.
How did the Redskins not take those picks and turn themselves into a dynasty? That's what I want to know. There was no move that they've ever made that should have been any more effective than that single one. And yet, they don't have any championships to show for it.
The number 3 all-time draft trade, San Francisco steals Steve Young.
Bill Walsh saw something in Steve Young that literally no one in the NFL saw. I mean, I didn't talk to one person on any other team who saw Steve Young as an NFL starting quarterback.
1 week before the 1987 draft, Bill Walsh fleeced the Tampa Bay Buccaneers out of a Hall of Fame quarterback.
Touchdown, 49ers!
New Bucs coach Ray Perkins wanted to draft Miami's Vinny Testaverde with the number 1 overall pick and was looking to dump his athletic but erratic quarterback.
The perception was that Steve Young, you didn't know exactly. He was this wild maverick, young horse that they didn't know how to tame.
Only one coach saw something in Young.
And that's when I stepped into the picture and said, we're going to go for him. He had a good arm. He was accurate. He was quick. He had great attitude about playing football. Then I made up my mind, we really want him. Then they wanted a second and a fourth, and we settled for that. It was the last second in the draft and the last fourth in the draft, so those were late picks.
They were willing to part with him, even though he had been their most outstanding player. In fact, when we went back there to play against Tampa, Steve got the award from the Tampa Bay Buccaneers as their outstanding player from the previous year.
Tampa selects on the first round quarterback Vinny Testaverde.
Vinny, we have your jersey, number 14, your college number, and we want you to score at least 14 points for every game.
Testaverde's performance was almost as ugly as the Bucs' old uniforms. In his first 2 seasons as a starter, he threw 57 interceptions.
You take Vinny Testaverde, and all of a sudden what you've done is you've taken a guy that's 21, 22 years old, and you said, hey, by the way, there's a franchise on your back. It's not any good. There's no real good players here, but you go ahead and drive it out of this desert. It's not going to happen.
Perkins used San Francisco's picks on linebacker Winston Moss, number 57, and wide receiver Bruce Hill. In 1990, Perkins was fired. Testaverde has played for 6 different teams, but the results have been largely the same.
He fires left. It is picked off by the Samuel.
In San Francisco, Steve Young helped the 49ers dynasty endure into the 90s.
He's got Rice again. Touchdown, 49ers.
He went to the perfect situation. He got to sit under Bill Walsh, play behind Joe Montana.
Young's arrival had Joe Montana looking over his shoulder.
Bill Walsh was great at establishing, I think the phrase was creative tension within his team. He liked keeping everybody on their toes, including Joe Montana.
At that time, people are saying, geez, maybe Montana's a little bit fragile. You know, 86, 87, he's getting hurt. The Giants knocked him out of the playoff game.
They got him back to the 15-yard line.
I think what Walsh saw, if you were going to stand up and tell your team, we are going to get the best players on this team, and nobody's position is ever going to be safe. Well, then why would your quarterback's position ever be safe?
Everyone wants to play. I want to play desperately, and I'm going to try to drive everyone nuts till they give me a shot.
Well, Joe Montana now, he's got a challenge for his job. And everybody in any walk of life, if they bring in somebody to yip at your heels, you're going to be a lot better.
Joe Cool responded with the best play of his career, leading the 49ers to 2 more Super Bowl titles.
Oh, what a catch by Rice! Touchdown! And the 49ers have won the Super Bowl.
In 1991, Young finally took over for Montana and took the 49ers to 4 NFC Championship games.
He caught it! He caught it!
And a victory in Super Bowl 29.
And a play fake. Young goes deep middle. He's got Jerry Rice. Touchdown 49ers!
And no one can ever take it away from us, ever!
And there's no way that the 49ers would have extended their greatness unless they went out and made the gutsy trade for Steve Young.
Steve Young, one of the courageous games I've ever seen, the stuff of legend.
Steve Young owes the 49ers forevermore for his career because coming out of Tampa Bay to anywhere else,
touchdown 49ers!
He might have gone on to been just a blip on the NFL scene instead of a Hall of Fame quarterback.
The number 2 all-time draft trade, the Rams deal for Marshall Faulk.
Marshall's name was mentioned
And I didn't in my wildest dreams feel like that was a possibility. I was stunned by it.
In 1999, Rams head coach Dick Vermeil entered the draft hoping to save his job and avoid another ugly exit from the NFL.
I am emotionally burnt out and therefore feel that I need a break.
After a 14-year layoff, Vermeil had returned to football with high hopes.
Here we go. 14 years ago, I left coaching, okay? I left coaching because I had to, and I'm not embarrassed to say it. Today I'm back because I have to.
But back-to-back losing seasons had Vermeil on the hot seat.
The game is over. The Vikings stop him at the 6-inch line.
This is in the variety of devastating. I mean, where do you go from here now?
I spoke to him after year 2, and he was concerned he would be fired. He was thinking of resigning. I mean, everything was up in the air. He was about as low as I have ever seen Dick Vermeil.
Lawrence Phillips had been a bust at running back, and Vermeil needed a focal point for the offense. With his job on the line, Vermeil traded 2nd and 5th round picks to the Colts for Marshall Faulk.
It happened primarily because Marshall Faulk was entering the final year of his contract and he wanted an extension, and basically made it known that without an extension he would hold out. At that stage of our development, coming off a 3-13 season, we thought that a holdout, which we felt we were going to face with Marshall, was counterproductive.
The Colts were intent on drafting Edgerrin James to team him with Peyton Manning and Marvin Harrison.
Sets, looks, fires it deep down the sideline, intended for Harrison. He's got it, touchdown!
Faulk, they figured, was running out of gas. In 5 NFL seasons, he'd put together 4,000-yard campaigns and was ready to hit the wall.
Touchdown, Marshall Faulk!
When Bill Polian made that trade, there were a lot of people who said, whoa, what are you doing?
He makes the trade, and it's one of those where you're thinking, well, we assume you know what you're doing, because this is a guy who was a quality player, a Pro Bowl running back. You just wonder, well, what's going to happen here? It was a 2nd-round pick. It was a 5th-round pick to St. Louis.
Faulk at the 5, still driving down, and a touchdown!
And then the conventional wisdom is, well, they're going to take Ricky Williams. Well, they didn't. They took Edgerrin James. And while they took some criticism at the time, history's going to show that he made the right call. While you hate to lose a Marshall Faulk, he got Edgerrin James, who, if not on Marshall Faulk's level, he's a half a notch below, because he had a great career here.
Edgerrin James pounds it in.
Polian used the St. Louis picks to select linebacker Mike Peterson and defensive end Brad Scioli, and the Colts went from worst to first in just 1 season.
If I'm not mistaken, we were 13-3 that year.
The Colts have won the AFC East for the first time in 12 years.
And lost in the divisional round of the playoffs to the eventual Super Bowl participant, Tennessee Titans.
The Titans lost the Super Bowl to the Rams, who were reborn behind Marshall Faulk.
Absolutely remarkable. Wow.
Well, I think Marshall basically redefined that position. He really did. I think that he expanded the spectrum of all the things that you can ask or expect a running back to do.
Pitch to Marshall Faulk on the misdirection, sweeps across the 50 to the 40, to the 30.
He's got that Marshall-esque stride to him, you know, where, I mean, he is really motoring, but he's just so smooth, it's so effortless, and all of a sudden he comes to a complete stop and the entire game passes by, and then he turns and goes in the opposite direction.
Forget the big red S. Superman wears a 2 and 8 on his chest.
Let's keep being happy.
The Rams' anemic offense became the greatest show on turf, and Marshall was in the center ring.
To the 10, to the 5, touchdown Rams! 33 yards.
That was good for the distance. Hey, Marshall, we didn't block anybody. We didn't block anybody. That was a hell of a run.
In just 1 season, Faulk took the Rams all the way to Super Bowl 34 and their first world championship in a half-century.
St. Louis, the gateway to the West, is now the gateway to the best.
The number 1 all-time draft trade. Bill Walsh trades up for Jerry Rice.
Number 1.
I would like to be the all-time receiver. They have some great receivers here, and I'm trying to follow in their footsteps.
Going into the 1985 draft, the greatest wide receiver of all time was regarded by almost everyone as an overrated commodity.
Touchdown again! Jerry Rice.
Scouts dismissed Jerry Rice's numbers at Mississippi Valley State as the product of a wide-open offense.
Fly pattern, Jerry Rice, touchdown.
I saw Jerry Rice highlight tape when I was in Houston the night before a game we had there, and this phenom was catching the ball all over the field, and I was saying to myself, this is an unbelievable player, and he was just flying through everybody, and his beautiful strides and his quick strides, there wasn't anybody that was going to catch him in the NFL.
I know when we were going into that draft, I was with the Raiders. He wasn't our type of receiver at that time because he just wasn't fast enough. You know, we were always looking for the 4.3s, 4.4s.
He didn't have what they considered a fast time in a 40. I think he ran a 4.59, but all you had to do was see him play. He was not a 4.59 runner.
Must have had that competitive speed that whenever he lined up against somebody, he's going to beat you no matter how fast you are.
That was, to me, one of the key things about Walsh, in that it really wouldn't matter if he went to Mississippi Valley, University of Mississippi, Mississippi School for the Deaf. You know, if you were a player, you weren't going to hide from Bill Walsh.
Only one other team showed interest in Rice, America's team.
The Cowboys thought Jerry Rice could be a player. At that time, they needed wide receivers.
Early in the draft, Rice was completely ignored by other teams.
Bill Fralick, Dwayne Bickett, Ken Rutgers, Ron Holmes, the 8th straight lineman or linebacker selected.
The Cowboys were confident they could get him with the 17th pick.
The 10th choice in the first round, Al Toon from Wisconsin.
The first team to take a wide receiver was the New York Jets. The second, the Cincinnati Bengals.
Cincinnati, wide receiver, Eddie Brown.
Dallas was poised to draft Rice at 17, but was stunned when Walsh engineered a trade with the Patriots.
San Francisco trades their first, second, and third round picks in this draft to New England Patriots for New England's first and third choices. San Francisco therefore moves up to the 16th spot in the first round. The San Francisco 49ers select wide receiver Jerry Rice of Mississippi Valley.
New England used the picks to draft Ben Thomas, Audrey McMillan, and Trevor Maddich.
And the 49ers traded a pick that wound up as Trevor Maddich for Jerry Rice. I mean, that's like Babe Ruth for whatever he was traded for.
For the end zone, all alone, Jerry Rice.
Having failed to draft Rice, the Cowboys descended into mediocrity, and Tom Landry eventually lost his job.
The Bengals drafted Eddie Brown ahead of Jerry Rice, and Brown had been a top receiver. It wasn't a bad pick.
Eddie Brown held on.
But when the two teams met in the Super Bowl, Rice had the best game of any receiver ever in the Super Bowl. And I think the Bengals might have looked back and said, well, maybe we made a mistake there.
And the 49ers have won the Super Bowl.
Rice won 2 more Super Bowls with the 49ers.
Touchdown 49ers.
The boy is going to party tonight.
Getting Jerry Rice, even though we only had one player from that draft class, and that was Jerry Rice, it was well worth it.
And Rice is there, and he's into the end zone. He's done it. Jerry Rice, in the 75-year history of the National Football League, is the touchdown scorer of the century.
Jerry was just the ultimate pass receiver.
And I owe everything to Bill Walsh because he took a chance. He saw this guy from Mississippi Valley State University, and he believed in me.
What Bill Walsh always a step ahead at was seeing the player what he could be in the NFL level with a couple years of coaching, as opposed to a lot of coaches who are looking for finished products right now, and really the draft is not about that.
There's no one particular catch that describes Jerry Rice, whether it's a one-handed miracle, whether it's 2 hands over the top of the defender, the greatest touchdown scorer in the entire history of professional football.